Welcome back to the Daily Carry Podcast, episode number 6. We are cruising right along, and we've had some really exciting discussions, and we are going to hopefully have another exciting discussion today, and we'll go ahead and strike that hopefully from the record because it'll definitely be exciting, depending on what you categorize as exciting. There's some good in the world, there's some bad in the world, there's some stuff kind of right down the middle, but definitely, in our world over here with the Rock Jiu-Jitsu team, I think we've got a lot more to look forward to than not.
Agreed.
Pretty exciting. Pretty excited about some of the events that we have on the calendar coming up. And one of those that we just announced that we've actually talked about on the podcast not too long ago is the Carry Your Cross Challenge. July 19th, 9 a.m. We are going to be carrying a life-size cross all the way to the top of Castle Rock.
Yep.
Any listeners who don't know what that is, that's just a landmark here in Castle Rock. It's a really big rock on top of a decently sized hill.
Yeah.
And we're going to climb a cross all the way to the top of that. And whoever wants to show up and be a part of it, show up and be a part of it. It's going to be a good time.
It'd be great, actually.
I'm excited for it. I think that it is good timing for people to be able to have something to just get together over and be able to have a purpose that they share in common, have a bold stand of faith in a world that obviously is quite divided right now, have something that can unite us,
Amen.
So I think that'll be exciting. But we are wrapping up June here, and July is literally right around the corner.
Yeah.
We are in some of the final hours of June that will be in 2025, and we've got a lot of conversations that we've had about manliness, what it is to be a man, and June, mental health month for men. I think it'd be a good idea to leave everybody on a positive note.
I agree. Yeah, because it's as we talked about, there's highs and lows, and sometimes it's tough and not always understood. And but yeah, we want to leave this on a high today. I think I had a very interesting conversation with a gal at church yesterday who I did not know was listening to our podcast. She is a friend of my wife, and Jana had sent her, I think it was episode 2. In episode 2, we really got into that, about what it was like to be a guy. And she came up to me yesterday and gave me a big hug and said, "Hey, I just need you to know, I listened to this, and then I sat down with my husband last night and listened to it again," which means she listened to 4 hours.
That was a long episode.
Because it was a long episode. And she said he was in tears at the end of it, and said, "Man, these guys nailed it. They really did." He said there's even some things they didn't say they could have said, but he said they really, really nailed it. So I was very appreciative of that. It was nice to have a gal walk up. And that was kind of one of the points that I made during the podcast is I think, hey, gals, if you're out there listening, this stuff's important. If somebody said, "What's it like to be a gal and be a woman in today's world? And what do they experience and what do they go through?" Oh, I'd tune in because I clearly miss it a lot. I screw up my relationship sometimes more than I should because I just don't understand. So do I sound like I'm popping?
Maybe a tiny bit
A
here
little
and
bit.
there.
I'll try to be more intentional into the microphone.
Yeah, I actually have the levels on the microphones cranked up a little bit higher than we normally do. So I think that you probably hear the headphones are kind of louder. I should have turned the headphones down maybe just a notch. But if it bothers you, you just let me know. So far, I think I'm managing so far.
All right,
But
back at it. Sorry.
But that's definitely really, really good feedback to hear. I'm glad to hear that. I know that we are obviously still new, still getting off the ground here, and any feedback from any listener is definitely appreciated. We are just having conversations.
Yep.
That's what we're doing, having conversations, and just all we can share is what we've gone through and what has sharpened us and how it could potentially apply to anybody else out there.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, there's going to be a lot of growth even just on this show. Just as we're having these conversations, I think that what we've talked about so many times is iron sharpens iron. I think that we're doing that on this show. I think that just talking about it, talking back and forth, you and I on this show, episode by episode, I think people will see it in lifetime as we learn and we grow together, as we just have these conversations.
Yep.
Because I think that's what the world's starving for, is just conversations like this, where we can sit down, connect with each other, and talk about what makes the world go round and how we can make the world that we're living in better within our own means, within our limitations, within our communities. What can we do to step up to the plate and do what we can do to make a change, make a difference? And to that point, I think that a lot of people out there probably just need to hear that all you can do is all you can do, but at the same time, don't expect that you're going to be changing the world and doing anything that's going to outlive yourself if you're not first and foremost working on being the best version of yourself. That's where it's really got to start, is you've got to go on this road of growth and self-development where you really make an investment into yourself. And that's one thing that in my prayer life, I try to have enough balance. Because obviously I pray for other people. I pray for needs. And that's biblical. That's part of the church, is to bear one another's burdens, bear one another's needs. And my brother, he just preached an incredible message this past Sunday. That was yesterday. And it was about that, bearing one another's burdens. The title of the message is "Where Has the Church Gone?" It was awesome. Highly encourage you. Look up the live stream. Watch that sermon. It was a very timely message in a world we're living in today. And he made lots of very good points and references just about how much talent is in churches today, music teams, all that. And that's great. Thank God for talent in the churches. But his challenge to the church was, this is great, but is this the church? Is the church this incredible keyboardist? Is the church all this talent on the platform? This is all great. It caters to the crowd, but we have to be able to make this distinction between the crowd and the church.
Yeah.
And one of the strongest points that he made in the sermon was, even Jesus had crowds by the multitudes, but the same crowd that would follow him, the same crowd that would go crazy following him all over, everywhere we go, through deserts, across seas, the same crowd that was following him ended up being the same crowd that ultimately also crucified him.
Yep.
So the difference between the crowd and the church, and the scripture that he used, I wish I remembered exactly what scripture it is. We can look it up maybe a little bit later, but the scripture that he used primarily for the text was that if you go out of your way to help one brother that's gone astray, that you'll spare him from death, but also cover a multitude of sins. That's the scripture. That's the scripture used primarily. And the driver behind the message is, that is what the church is. The church is the few who are not going to be just in the crowd, but they're the ones who are getting shoulder to shoulder and living life with each other the way that we're intended to,
Right.
in God's purpose for our lives. And the reason that I am making that analogy, so I'll go back to what I was saying originally, is with my prayer life, as I'm praying for other people, I have to also make sure that I'm praying for myself. It might sound selfish, but I can only be who I need to be for other people if I am who I need to be for other people.
Right.
And it might sound simple, might sound basic, but I think it's very important whenever you're praying not to just take on the burdens and the needs of other people, because we need to be the version of ourselves that we need to be if we're going to carry those burdens with them. And so I don't think we can ever get too far out of balance where we're only praying for other people and not ourselves. We have to be praying. And a prayer of mine daily is, God, please help me to be the husband that I need to be. Help me to be the businessman that I need to be. Help me to be the friend that I need to be, the son that I need to be, the brother that I need to be. Because it all has to start there. If I can't just be the version of myself that I'm supposed to be, then how am I going to, realistically, I'm limited in how much my influence is going to bear weight in this world.
Right.
The only way that it is ever going to be an influence that matters and outlives me is if I truly get out there and live the way that I'm supposed to and the way that God's intended me to live. And with that, you have to have that thing that grounds you. And that is, God, help me to be today. That's the thing, is it's easy to just say that prayer every Sunday.
Sure.
But as we've talked about also on this show, and what's very important to the daily carry is daily carry. Carry your cross daily. Part of that daily for me is, God, please help me not to miss the mark today. Please help me to bear it and bear it well. Give me the strength that I need to bear it. and give me the patience that I need to bear it. All the things that come with carrying and bearing what we have to bear, what we have to carry every day. It's okay. And not only is it okay, you need to be praying and asking God to help you carry that weight every day.
I think that's very well said. I'm looking forward to listening to your brother's sermon on it, because that's a pretty powerful title that you threw out. We're talking about what it's like to be a man, and what it's like to be. So sometimes I'll be honest with you, I get a little apprehensive in throwing out a title before, but I'll say it's also difficult to be a Christian man. And that is, to me, when I look in the mirror, it's difficult. When I walk a journey outside of the house, it can be difficult. When I get around certain people that give me a really easy comfort zone to where I can kind of go along with the world, so to speak, as opposed to standing where I should. That can be challenging. And so, if you're listening right now and you're like, yeah, you Christians got it all figured out, or you guys think you're better than everybody else, or just fill in the. There's so many different things that you could talk about. No, faith journey is hard. Faith journeys are challenging, especially in my opinion, for men, because we take on, as we've discussed so many times, and I don't want to roll the dog over and kick it again. I'll just simply say this: we take on a lot, we compartmentalize a lot, and we don't expand a lot with other people. So we just stuff, and I know I beat that to death in one of the episodes. But I'm reiterating it simply because when you add Christianity to it, and people read the Bible, I think what freaks a lot of non-believers out is the Bible's filled with a lot of accountability, various degrees of persecution, men that were leaders in the Bible that were held to not only a higher standard, but made some pretty bad choices, but ultimately through forgiveness and in God's eyes, they're used as examples forevermore. And I oftentimes, I don't know how you feel, but for me, what it's like to be a man is I often find myself measuring or trying to measure up to other guys, not necessarily putting dudes up on pedestals as much as just trying to look in the mirror and going, man, why would somebody listen to anything that I have to say when they've got Dave or John or Bill who's got it all figured out and they got it all together? And the truth of the matter is they don't. And I have to remember that sometimes. I have to remember that, some people are born a silver spoon. Some people will be ditch diggers their whole life, and there's a whole lot of people in between, a whole lot of different callings. And all of that's all good and fine. But at the end of the day, it's how I'm picking up my cross and carrying it and what I'm doing that matters most. It's not my job title. It's not my role. It's not what group I'm leading. It's not what board I'm sitting on. It's not how much money I make. It's not a socioeconomic status. It's literally, am I doing what I'm called to do, led to do, and truthfully stand for? And one of the things that I can say, and I'll turn it over to you, is I'm pretty much the same guy on Friday night as I am on Sunday morning. I don't really deviate a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of, it's not so much what you see is what you get, because I've got some depth to me, as all men do. We sometimes hide it, but I'm really not a lot different on Friday night than I am on Sunday morning. If I'm on the hockey bench and I'm playing a game, you're pretty much getting the same Micah you get at Sunday morning in church.
Which is good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the consistency is very important. And I think we could literally just spend some time just talking about consistency and how that really fits into what it is to be a man, is that you don't compromise. Because we see a lot of that even in Jesus' story whenever he's tempted, right? Whenever he has to go through the same temptations that we have to. And what did Jesus fight whenever he was tempted? What did he fight back with? He fought back with the word. He knew the word through and through, and he was able to quote scripture and get through those temptations. So I think there's a lot to be said about consistency. But what I will say is I just went ahead and pulled up the scriptures that my brother used as text, because I think this is very, very applicable to what we've talked about so far and what we're most likely going to lead into and then close out with in this episode. And it was James 5:19 through 20. It says, "My brothers and sisters, if one of you should wander from the truth and someone bring that person back. Remember this: whoever turns a sinner from the error of their way will save them from death and cover a multitude of sins. So what's so beautiful about this is he also tied it into Galatians 6:2, which says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. It's very important here because we're calling ourselves Christians and we're talking about being a Christian man. Well, this is a very important scripture because it says, so fulfill the law of Christ. It doesn't say, so fulfill the very strong suggestion of Christ. No, it says the law of Christ is to bear one another's burdens and to bear them with love.
Right.
So as we bear one another's burdens, it's definitely a part of manhood that right now is kind of, it seems like, pretty wayward. It's kind of every man for himself, I would imagine. Until you get plugged into a community you've probably heard on the podcast, you've probably heard today in this episode, maybe. You've definitely heard people in the background, previous episodes, and seen maybe even on some of the videos where you've seen in the background here, people rolling. People are a part of that community. In this episode, you've probably heard people clanking iron because we've got a CrossFit gym next door. So there's some of that camaraderie that's good, but this is what you have to remember is, okay, being physically fit, being physically prepared, that's important. You're not going to take any of that with you.
Right.
So what are we investing our time, our effort, our energy into in this life that is going to have eternal weight? Because we have to be doing something. There has to be a reason why we're on this planet. And when we're gone, whenever my life's over, whenever your life's over, life goes on. There's going to be a world here still, obviously, unless everyone's raptured out of here, which is a separate discussion. But to think that whenever I die that it's just over, that's, for people who don't believe in anything, that's just honestly a very almost selfish way of thinking. You really think that the world revolves around you so much that whenever you die, it's just going to be nothing? Before you, there was many, many years of history. And after you, most likely, there's still going to be many, many years of history. Life goes on. And to think that this is it is very shallow thinking.
It feels empty to me, too. It's like really empty. Like what?
Purposeless.
Yeah.
Wandering for what reason? To what end? What aim? There has to be life after this. And obviously you and I both believe this. I'm just speaking to anybody out there that may not be on the faith journey or maybe be curious or exploring, but haven't made any decisions. I saw somebody the other day explain, they were talking with somebody and they said, okay, if I'm wrong, I'm not going to heaven. If you're wrong, you're going to hell. So, I mean, there's we could sit and we could just talk about the pros and cons and we could unpack it that way. But at the end of the day, don't you want your life on this earth to mean more than just accumulating stuff, to mean more than just working really hard and then dying and it's over? That seems like something that every man should want, is not to just be on this planet to ultimately be self-serving, but to have a purpose. And the reason that I'm bringing any of this up is because the way that it ties into bearing each other's burdens is, as we have this kind of culture right now that's definitely isolated people more than it ever has. We've got this disconnect between people with social media where it kind of feels like you're plugged in, but you're really not plugged in the way that we're programmed to be connected to each other. Camaraderie at a CrossFit gym or a jiu-jitsu gym is great, but that just barely scratches the surface of what true brotherhood is meant to be.
Right.
And I think that people in the military, people in law enforcement, they probably get even that next level above, fitness, above jiu-jitsu. And that's a whole nother, you guys are brothers, shoulder to shoulder. You're ready to fight against the face of evil if you need to together. And you do many times. But still, even whenever you talk about that still is not completely fulfilling what is supposed to be fulfilled in our lives, which is the law of Christ.
Right.
And that is to have a brotherhood and a sisterhood, brothers and sisters together that are able to bear one another's burdens.
Right.
And I mean, we could just talk about burdens for a second, because a burden can be all kinds of different. A
Sure.
burden is this in algebra. It's X, and we don't need to talk about math because I'm a little out of my wheelhouse there.
But
I
it's so
can't
true,
admit
though.
it. I can't admit it because I am a real estate professional, so I have to be careful. I can't admit that I don't really like math, but I don't really like math that much. I only do it when I need to, right? But a burden really is X. So I think that we could just talk for a minute about a burden and what burdens men have specifically, because we can talk about bearing each other's burdens and that being an important part of manhood and Christian manhood. But let's make sure that we're giving context. What kind of burdens do we carry? What kind of burdens do we bear? What are we talking about bearing together? There is a world of burdens that we could talk about. But what do you think? What would be the first thing that comes to your mind as far as a burden today?
I had to lean forward into the microphone on this one because this is you hit something that strikes the like marrow deep chord, and I don't know. I'll just do my best to explain it quickly. So if there's people out there that are watching saying, man, you're talking about God a lot. You're talking about the Bible. Is that what this podcast is about? Well, yeah, in part it is. It's also about that knife and the gun and the small of your back and what it's like to support each other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're out there and you're saying, okay, what about this God thing? Like, why is this such a big deal to you? Here's my answer. We have test driven now. Let's just say the last 10 years. We'll go pre-COVID a few years. Let's just say the last 10 years. We have taken God out of schools. We've taken the First Amendment and twisted it. We've attacked the Second Amendment. So this is America stuff, right? As well as scriptural stuff. You start combining these two, we're knocking them down, we're stripping it out, we're attacking. Social media has truly come to life in the last 10 years. It's been around for a while, but it's really, really taken stride in the last 10 years. And in the last, 6 months-ish, AI has practically converted everything we're doing in life. I mean, I was reading something the other day where this kid literally just got through his entire senior year and didn't do a single piece of homework and got a 4-point something or other and was bragging about it because there's no way to validate it. It's a rabbit trail for a second, but my point is we've gotten away from substantive value. We've gotten away from faith, and we've test driven this man thing for a while. We've test driven this "it's all about me" thing for a while. And where's the world? Where are we at right now? Like if somebody looks at me and goes, well, but Micah, I've read the Bible. There's a lot of darkness in it. Well, there is, and there's also a lot of light, and there's a lot of hope. And then there's one thing that the world can't offer you, and that's actually eternal salvation. And we can get into we can invite all the theologians in the world in here. We could have 25 guests in here that are theologians, just have this amazing discussion and go back and forth. But let's just talk about what it's like to be a man in today's society. You are bombarded by other men doing worldly stuff. And I'm not saying this in a preachy way or a looking down way, or I've got the answer that you don't have. Trust me, I do the same things you do. I make the same mistakes. I like bang 'em up movies. I like driving fast. I like fighting in hockey. I like all this stuff. But when it comes down to humility and humbling myself before God and carrying my cross, this is something I've not done very well in my life. And I can tell you, when I look backwards at that, if I use Micah Richardson, me solely as an example, looking in the mirror, when I don't do that well, my life's a wreck. And when I do it well, my life is not a wreck. And when I look at society right now, we're not doing it well. And what's going on? We've never had more information, never had better technology, never had more. We're unlimited in every category. And in my opinion, my sole opinion, and not a humble opinion, pretty opinionated opinion here, we've never been more wayward. So what's it like to be a man in today's society? That is a great question. Because right now, if you don't have focus and you don't have something that you're striving for, and in the case we're talking about faith and God, I actually don't know how you make it through. I really don't. Because I'm watching what's unfolding in the streets right now, and there are people that are out throwing rocks at law enforcement and burning down buildings and lighting cars on fire. And, one day electric cars are great, and the next day we're painting Nazi symbols on them. That's man. That's mankind. That's what it's like to be a man. And if you're a dude, you got a small business, you're trying to make your way through, maybe you go off and you're a doctor or CPA or whatever, and you're just worried about even going into work right now because our country is so wayward. Look what we've removed and look what we've added, and then ask yourself where the value is. That's my soapbox.
And definitely a necessary soapbox, because you're absolutely right. Bernie Sanders was just on Joe's podcast not very long ago.
I watched it.
And he mentioned on there that there was a paneling of some people that just the question was pretty simple. You right now in your situation versus you in your situation 40 years ago, do you think that your situation would have been easier to manage 40 years ago or easier and better to manage now? And majority of people said it was probably better 40 years ago.
For sure. And
Bernie's point on the podcast, I'm not saying that I completely agree with everything that Bernie says, but his point on the podcast was, well, what you just said, technology's advanced more than it ever has. And we've got all this working in our favor that could be working in our favor, but it's not. And obviously the point that they're trying to make is that it's all this governmental problems. It's all on man, even blaming the problems on man. And
says the guy that's been in the government for 55 years. But I'm sorry. But yeah, go ahead.
And here's the problem is that they're as men talking about how we can fix it as men.
Right.
Which is not ever going to really fix it. If you really want to pinpoint really where we started to deviate from a lot of the prosperity in our nation, it's absolutely as God has been less honored and less incorporated in this country, the country has done less and less well. And we've had more and more problems. Why? Because as we have this deviation from the foundation of America, of course, the foundation is what was holding everything up.
Right.
And the foundation of America, as we talked about, I don't want to just keep on recycling everything that we've talked about, but it is one nation under God, indivisible. That is our foundation. And as we deviate further and further from that foundation, what happens whenever you start basically just taking a jackhammer to your foundation is everything else starts to crumble around it.
Mm-hmm.
And very much so, I agree with you. That's what we're seeing and feeling in this country. And to go back and to kind of answer my own question, because I had asked you examples of a burden. And obviously, that is a burden. Our burden we share is actually we want our country, we want our community to not be on a self-destructive trajectory. We would like things to take a turn for the better. But we can talk about problems, and we will talk about problems. And we'll talk about just current events, whether it's good, whether it's bad. We'll reference those lots on these episodes. But to kind of bring it into a more easily digestible perspective, just what we announced earlier in this podcast, which I'm incredibly excited about, the Carry Your Cross Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
This is an example for me of a burden. I've had it on my heart and in my mind for a while, and I really felt that it was inspired, and I really felt this draw to it, like I needed to do it because the idea just came, and this was over a year ago. So you're talking about an idea and really a burden. And this is being a little bit different of an example of a burden. Burdens can come in a lot of different ways. But this was a burden for me because I wanted to do it, but here I have just been busy with life and other things, as happens often, and just hadn't really gotten around to it. But thankfully, I had shared that burden with a couple of other men around me, one of them being Brian, who's really continued to encourage me. And then also now one of them being you. Mm-hmm. And you sent me a couple of days ago a cool little graphic of this guy who keeps saying next year. And it's a graphic of this guy next year, and he's showing like a Corvette or whatever. So I told you, so you're telling me I really need to go out and buy a C8, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what
and then
that
you're
was.
Like, no, you need to do the Carry Your Cross Challenge. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. I know. Okay. So finally, put the poster together, put the flyer together, posted it, got it out there. We have the date, going to send an email, going to just invite as many people as possible. And whenever I was doing this, because whenever I woke up yesterday morning, went to church, heard the sermon, I already had it on my mind, on my heart. Carry Your Cross Challenge. I'd already figured out the date that we're going to do it. And obviously, we're only three weeks out now from the 19th. But yesterday, I had just made this commitment. And I just said, okay, I'm going to do this today. No matter what, I'm going to post the flyer. And as the day does, it gets away from me. And so it's late. It's like 10 o'clock at night. And I just told my wife, should I post this today or should I do it tomorrow? And we both talked about it. And the more we talked about it, the more I realized out of everything that we've done, everything, businesses, everything, the things that are definitely, not even probably, but definitely the most important are the things like this. Carry Your Cross Challenge. Why? Not because I think that it's going to be some huge, big, incredible turnout and there's going to be thousands of people there. No, but because this is something that was put on my heart and I've wanted to do for a long time. It's been a burden, and it's been a burden that others have come side by side with me and shared with me and helped me carry out to now where we actually have the date, we have the announcement, and we're working on actually building the cross, a life-size cross out of railroad ties, which is going to be really cool. But this is the most important thing. Take everything else away. The most important thing that I can do are these things that are honoring God. It's not about a business. It's not about a face. It's about one thing, and that is God. It's about what Jesus Christ has done for us and what we're going to turn around and do for him. And I think that we'll see where this goes. But the thing that I really like about it is I think for a lot of people out there, not just men, but people, whenever even if you're not on a faith journey, but if you are on a faith journey, sometimes with it all being very invisible, if you know what I mean, as far as your prayer and your walk with God, there is absolutely an invisible world. There's a spiritual realm, and there's scriptures about spiritual warfare, wrestling not against flesh and blood. So a lot of our battles can be very much invisible. Now, they'll take form and become visible a lot of times. But the point that I'm making with this is the Carry Your Cross Challenge literally puts something in front of you physically that you can do as an outward expression of your faith. And really what it is just a bold stand for faith. And I'm really excited about it because, number one, I could care less if 100 people show up or if 5 people show up. I know that there's going to be at least, if you and me and Brian are the only ones who show up and we got to carry this 150, 200-pound cross up to the top, we're going to be sweating. But I'll tell you what, when we get to the top, I'm sure there's going to be maybe potentially a couple tears, and we're going to think, well, we did this thing. Yeah. But regardless, what it's about is carrying this burden that we have all come together and agreed, okay, we're going to carry this together. Yeah. This is something that we feel like we need to do. We should do this. And that's just one example that comes to mind. That's kind of an easier one as we kind of dive deeper into this topic about bearing one another's burdens. Because if there's one thing that we could leave men with closing out mental health, closing out what it is to be a man, what it is to be a Christian man, well, it means, number one, plugging yourself into a community that's going to sharpen you, but then it's also going to be knowing whenever it's your time, your turn to turn around and be that iron that sharpens somebody else. Right. And so it's important to have that qualification of, okay, this is what a burden can look like. Maybe you have some burdens of your own that you need to share with somebody, because maybe it just hasn't happened because you haven't even taken that first step of telling somebody about this idea or this burden that you have. And this is one example. There's other things that burden us every day, just the stress and the pressure of going to work, providing for our families, right, working hard to better ourselves. There's habits and hang-ups that we have that can be incredibly hard to overcome if we've got addictions, whether it's content, whether it's actual addiction to substance. It can be much easier to bear those burdens and to deal with those burdens that weigh us down whenever we have a brotherhood ready to help us sharpen ourselves. And so that was just context that I wanted to make sure to give on a burden, because burden, it's, I think, a pretty decently common word, but obviously it's very much used in the Bible and in a lot of translations like King James, like older versions. So just a burden today, I think it's important for people to know what we're talking about whenever we talk about a burden.
Right.
It can have lots of different meanings,
Well, you asked the question, and I owe you an apology because you
No,
asked
you don't.
you asked a very direct question, and I gave a very broad overview. But to me, that was a massive burden that I think mankind is facing right now because we've pulled so much good out, and even though we've added so much tech and so much information and so much capability, we've never been more wayward. And that's the crazy thing. When I was watching Bernie and Joe talk the other day, that they were categorically agreeing with each other on the very things that you and I agree with each other on. And this is why I said, I don't remember what episode it was a couple ago, where I said, I think people know that the whole identify as a dog cat thing is crazy. But when you're voting party line and your party line tends to go down that road, that rabbit hole of some nonsensical stuff, I still think people know in their heart of hearts, this is silly, right? Like, it's silly. But is it burdensome? Is it burdensome if you're the school board trying to manage it? Is it burdensome if you're the parent that's dealing with the kid that's coming home all of a sudden? Is it burdensome? I mean, to your point, yeah, it is. And so I was taking it from an overarching approach that I think a lot of mankind right now, and I mean on both sides of the political aisle, I mean on both sides of faith, either you're a believer or you're not a believer, regardless of your socioeconomic status, regardless of your title, your role. I believe that where we're at right now is incredibly burdensome for everybody. I just think it's a little bit harder if you don't have something that you're not only you've been faith bound on, but an eternal promise that is actually legitimate. And there are people that will argue that, and that's fine. That's a debate for another day. But for me, if you're asking me a personal burden, I can tell you it's all over my heart right now to start a legitimate men's group out of this dojo, out of this gym right here in Castle Rock, Colorado, that brings not only who we have in here already, because we've got, let's be honest, we got a couple dudes in this gym right now that you and I both know. We're walking journeys with them on a personal level, and they're going through some fairly mighty struggles. Let's just leave it there, right? Would that be any different at the CrossFit place next door? I have no idea. I'm assuming there's people walking in there with problems. I don't know what kind of relationship they have going on here, but it's a little bit different when you're on the mat and you know these people and you've walked a journey with them to some degree, and now you're out there on the mat sharpening each other, making each other better physically, and the ability to jits together. But when you start looking through the lens of the brokenness, the hurt, what these guys are going through, the pain, the suffering, job loss, there's a guy I'm going to leave very much nameless right now in Castle Rock, and I'll just leave it there. But his baby girl has got tumors going through her brain and up and down her spine. And 6 months ago, they were talking about, getting a driver's license and who's she going to date and, what is she going to wear to prom? I mean, all of this stuff, right? And right now he's going, is she going to be here next month? And I can't fathom that burden. I can't fathom that pain, right? So I look at it, my burden that I carry is I want to bring guys together in very much in a residual repeat process to where we're constantly with each other, moving forward, edifying each other, uplifting each other, bringing each other together, giving a place for guys to outlet. And I don't mean a gripe session or come in and I got daddy issues and let me, single-handedly take over the group and tell you all of my woes and my pities. No, I'm talking about people that are legitimately searching, lost, hurting, or wanting to be there for other guys. And that's my burden is to bring that together. And it all comes from my personal history in life. Selfishly, it really does, because of some of the journeys that I've had to walk, some of the journeys I've walked with other people. I see their loss, I see their loneliness, I see them end themselves, right? They end their life. And I don't want to be on the receiving end of yet another one of those phone calls. There's been too many. And it's not that that's not that I have not tried or have not tried to get in front of these things. It's just that I know what I've compartmentalized. I know the depth of the things that I've compartmentalized. And so if I can do it, I know other guys can do it. And if they do it and I didn't reach out or I missed that opportunity and they're no longer here, that's a really hard way to try to go to bed at night, every night, thinking, what did I miss? What did I miss? So that's my burden. My burden is just to bring men together so that we don't have that anymore. And it's not because I can stop it all or I've got all the answers. It's a resource. It's an outlet. It's a place. We can get on the mat here, roll. We can get up in the backcountry, get dirty. We can go ATVing. We do a lot of things, but it's about bringing men together and finding a common ground through faith, unapologetically through faith.
Well, it just serves as a really, really good example of exactly what I said before about my burden, sharing it with Brian, sharing it with you. You help encourage, and now here we go. We're going to do the Carry Your Cross Challenge. It's the same thing because you were here. You know, we started because another thing that I had a burden for was to start the mat church on Sundays.
Yeah.
We did that. We did it for a little bit and kind of just fizzled out a little bit over time. But I think that with that being kind of the burden that's definitely reciprocal and shared there, we just need to figure that out.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. We're in an opportunity where we'll see how the Carry Your Cross Challenge goes. I don't know, but that could be very well a very good platform to be able to tell any of the guys who show up, hey, just so you know, we're going to start having challenges every month. It doesn't have to be Carry Your Cross Challenge, but it could just be some kind of other challenge or whatever. Because I think that a challenge can draw a lot of men. But I also think that in that challenge and then being able to have a discussion like what you're talking about, where it's not going to just be, oh, woe is me, but it's going to be, hey, guys, you're here with a purpose. Let's talk about how we can sharpen each other to make sure that we're ready to fulfill that purpose every single day.
Yeah.
And just being that support system that right now the world is starving for, men are starving for there to be a community that holds each other accountable and responsible to make good decisions and to make every single day your mission that I'm going to do whatever it takes today to make tomorrow better. Not for me, not just for my own self-serving purpose and my own self-serving desires, but for my family, for my community, those around me. I want to be who I'm supposed to be in. As we've already talked about on this podcast, the ultimate example we have of that is not to be self-serving, but it's to be on this planet to serve others.
So do you think, it's June 30th, we're closing out this month that's attributed to men's mental health awareness. And every day, every week, every month throughout the course of the year, there's something different, right? There's always something going on. There's always an awareness of this or a thing. And so, I mean, there's National Donut Day. And I swear, I think it's like 11 days out of the year.
I hope so. I hope it's more than that.
Every time I turn around, I feel like it's National Donut Day. But there's always something going on, right? There's always a cause. You said it the other day, like ruck challenges. Those things are good, but, fill in the blank. I mean, we had one start out here in front of the coffee shop. The guys that did, what did they do, 145 miles, like in 4 days. Yeah. I mean, that's some pretty intense. That's some intense physical stuff considering the pathways they took in and around here. I know where they went. But what's also impressive about it is not just the amount of miles, but the commitment to do something like that. Like that's like a 10, 11 hour day nonstop. I mean, what are you doing? Sipping water while you're moving 40 miles a day, 42 miles a day. There's a lot of intent behind that. I mean, like you got to prep for that. You got to work for it. Then you got to go and complete it. Imagine, and it was a good cause. It was all very good. Like I applaud these guys, but at the end of the day, imagine that kind of intentionality right now across the board in America for good things. Imagine with that many people just doing stuff good as opposed to taking the easy route and the cop out, as I like to say it all the time. I just imagine what our country could be. I really do. Instead, we're divided and we're angry. And what's it like to be a man in today's society? That's what we're talking about. It's flipping hard. It's hard. I mean, at the end of the day, it is hard. So the goal is to give hope, right? Like to me, you just said it all. You kind of summed it up. Like if you're going to do something hard, make it worthwhile, and make sure it edifies somebody. Make sure you're building up the guy next to you. Because if all you're doing is tearing him down or filling his head with nonsense, gossip or whatever, or just blowing people up on social media because you can sit at home on your keyboard and behind your little fake name and just destroy. Understand what comes with that. When push comes to shove, there's an accountability and there's a residual, as Jane would call it, the butterfly effect, right? And There's studies on this and books on it and movies on it, and it's there because it's true. There is a cause and there is an effect. We're all guilty of it. I've had my moments where I've looked at something and I respond when I shouldn't, or I've said something that I shouldn't say, or I do something I shouldn't have done. It irritates me in the moment. It frustrates me. Or I'm in law enforcement and I'm trying to keep the peace. I'm trying to keep the balance. And I've got these people on the outside that just bent on making life hard for everybody. And you're sitting back like, what the heck? There's trillions upon trillions upon trillions of these examples that have happened over the course of lifetime in the history of the earth. And here we are today. And when you really look at it, for as long as we've been around, if you look at the strides we've made really since like 1900 to now, what are we talking? I mean, how many years since the steel industry of the turn of the century, where high rises just first started getting built? I mean, think what man accomplished in 1900. Think about the Great Depression, then World War II, then, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now we're in 2025, and we have vehicles that drive themselves and will drop you off. And we got technology where I can pick up my phone and beam anybody anywhere on the planet inside of seconds. I mean, it's all almost surreal. And yet you still got to be a dude in all of this. You still got to get up every day, take it to the max, take care of other people, do your thing, take care of your responsibilities, pay your bills. So all of the greatness that we've created, all the tech that we've created, all this stuff that supposedly makes life easier, I don't know that it does. I think sometimes it makes life way harder, more complicated, more confusing, more what do I trust, especially with AI now. Somewhere in there's still a heart and soul. Somewhere there's still a guy inside of there, still wanting. He got a little kid inside of him, just trying to be a man, trying to lead well. He's trying to be a good husband, trying to be a good father, trying to be a good peer, a good worker, whatever it may be. You're still a guy. And what's it like to be that? It's hard because guys compartmentalize. I've said it a dozen times now. We stuff things down when we don't know what to do. And if you don't have a good outlet, you don't have a good resource, we know the end result. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a 22-a-day stat coming out of the military after these men and women went in and served. I don't care what your capacity of service is. If you signed up and you went and you served your country, you deserve better than you've gotten. At the end of the day, you deserve better than you've gotten. And if we've got a number of dudes that are ending it every day at a rate of 22 per day, it's almost become a punchline to a bad joke. I mean, it really is. And it saddens me because this is something that we could get in front of right now, and we don't. We got a lot of people fighting for the cause, but universally, categorically across the board, you would think everybody in America would understand that. We don't. So what's it like to be that guy? What's it like to be the guy who, and let's talk about the guy just for a second that went over into the box, who lost a buddy, who defended freedom, came back over here and didn't integrate well back into society, as you mentioned the other day, because he's just in a different world. He's seen things that people can't relate to. They say, oh, we appreciate you. Thank you for your service. But you don't know what it's like to sit next to a dude and watch half his limbs get blown off by an IED and then come home and all of a sudden you got to be an insurance broker tomorrow because you got a job, right? Like you got to come back and do this thing. And I think I said a couple episodes ago, I actually had a buddy call me and he said, your numbers were pretty close, Mike. He said a month in a hard city on a go-get-em place, a Detroit, a Philly, a Baltimore, places like that, where you're just running and gunning all the time. You'll see more in a month than most people in the civilian world will see in a lifetime as far as bad stuff goes. That's not far-fetched. It's not far-fetched, and guys just don't. You just don't reintegrate well. I think that's why divorce rates are high. I think that's why suicide rates are high. And we've talked about this already, so I don't want to kick the can down the road here, but it is important. And if this month is about awareness, then the thing that you've said sums it up best. It really does. I mean, we could practically close the episode with you need a support group. You need the right people to talk to. And that's the key. It's not just somebody to talk to. It's got to be the right people to talk to. And you can pull yourself out. You can pull yourself up. You don't have to see the only end is the end. That's the part that breaks my heart. That's my burden to get guys together.
I agree. I mean, the world is so messed up with, especially whenever it comes to these types of topics. I just saw the other day some graphic that was put together and somebody had put out that said something about suicidal guys are just being told suicide is not the answer by other suicidal guys.
Yeah.
Like that's the world we're living in right now, where it's really it's gotten that bad
Mm-hmm.
to where that's what people actually believe, and people are so down in the dumps and in the depths of despair where they may not even realize it, but being able to pop your head up out of the sand and out of that water is not as far off as you think.
Right.
It's literally one figurative phone call away, getting on your knees and talking to the one who really matters.
I want to flip that around. You made a really good point, and I want to hit on something that has hit me twice this week in talking to two different dudes going through situations that are probably bordering on not just divorce, but the potential of never communicating with their other half again. And I want to make 1 point and 1 point only. And this stuff, I've never understood it. I can't wrap my head around it. You meet her, you date her, you engage, you fall in love, you have your job, she has hers, whatever it may be. You have a couple kids together, you're raising your kids, and you're 8, 10, 12 years in. And you had a few disagreements here or there, but for the most part, your life has been decent. Like the average person that knows you would look at you and go, wow, look at that couple. They're a pretty cool couple. They're pretty amazing. Look what they're going on. Good vacations, great pictures, their social media posts, they always look happy. In person, they seem happy together. Like you're not faking it kind of deal. And then all of a sudden, one of you makes a choice to go down a road you shouldn't go down. You end up having an affair. Something happened behind closed doors that you don't, the rest of the world wouldn't know about. But the driver I'm getting at is you have that affair. The other person finds out. There's excuses made. Whatever happens, and you become within one moment of transaction and maybe just a few minutes in time, like literally a few minutes in time, you went from having a 12-year history, 2 kids in your whole life, to this other person you vehemently hate. You despise all of a sudden. And it is astonishing to me how quickly we as humans, men and women both, can turn on somebody. I said it the other day, I think it was in episode 1. I was talking to somebody asked me, I don't understand road rage. Like, how does road rage happen? Like, it's just, you're just driving down the roadway. And the next thing, 2 people are just shooting each other. I'm like, yeah, that's that's what men, I hate to say it, but men mostly are cut from. It's an ego. It's a testosterone. Something bad happens, and within 5 to 8 seconds of that thing happening, you're already at a point ready to fight this other guy, and even to the point of pulling out a weapon and shooting each other over a lane change or somebody speeding. So why in the world would it be different in a marriage when you have 2 people that are fully integrated, heading in the same direction? Life is good. Somebody makes a bad choice. Next thing you know, that you hate each other. And you're telling all your friends why they're so terrible. That's just human nature. So again, when somebody says, what's it like to be a guy? Well, that's what it's like to be a human. But the guy side of that, to me, is we as men, sometimes we just make really, really bad decisions. And rather than swallowing our pride, we just double down on our ego and we try to fight our way out of it. And then we compartmentalize it. And then ultimately we just get into a point where there's nowhere to turn and we end it. And you would think there would be something in there to get in front of people, but sometimes, sadly, there's just not.
There's a lot to unpack there because there's a lot going on as far as whenever somebody gets to that point. But I will say this: you mentioned a lot of you mentioned marriages that you think from the outside, wow, it's going well, good for you guys. But in my experience, what I've seen is it's almost always those are the ones. Usually you don't. I mean, there's definitely got to be a handful of instances you're like, yeah, that's never going to work.
Right.
But a lot of times it's like out of nowhere.
Right.
There's been lots of times in my life where me and my wife, we've maybe gone and had dinner with people that we're friends with, and then a week later, maybe a month later,
yeah,
oh, by the way, we're separating. I think we're going to get a divorce.
Right.
And that's kind of seems to be a kind of common theme right now. And I do think that there's a lot going on in the world that is kind of giving people I don't know. I know that COVID was a lot to get through. I know that the former administration was a lot to get through. But then come the new administration, and not really anything's getting better fast.
No,
Um,
there'll be a lot to get through there too.
I think that maybe, possibly, we had some people holding their breath that things were going to get better, and they
Mhm.
didn't. And I think we have a lot of people just giving up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to necessarily mean just marriages. I think that there's a lot of people just giving up on life in general, because right now, the state of the country, the state of the economy, I think that a lot of people kind of bought into the idea, well, if Trump gets in office, then things are going to get better. We haven't seen that. The country hasn't gotten any better. Trump can say that it's gotten better all that he wants. People can say that it's gotten better. The only thing that I'd say that we're doing well right now, and a lot of people will argue that we're not, but I do think that we are. The only thing that is getting better is I do think that crime is getting taken off of our streets.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it would be naive to think that the country's just going to immediately get better immediately. Obviously, that's not going to happen. It took a lot of time for the country to get to where it is. It'll take a lot of time for the country to get better. You don't
Right.
just get fat and out of shape over one horrible pizza that you ate.
I expect to get skinny over
years.
one salad I eat, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, so so the point that I'm making, because I don't want to get too caught up in the weeds here. I think that a lot of people were holding their breath that better times were coming, and they're not here yet. They're not here yet. And I think that what people need to hear and people need to know is that you can't put your stock into people. You can't put your stock into the government. You can't put your stock into America.
Right.
What's going to make your life better is starting to walk according to your purpose.
Yeah.
Nothing will make sense. Nothing will be worth your effort, your energy, your time. Everything will feel like this monumental depression, this overwhelming task to do even the most easy, regular things. And this is my understanding of actual depression, clinical depression, is whenever it starts to feel like just the small, regular, everyday things are just overwhelming. Like, oh, I got to stop and get gas in my car again. And that just all of a sudden feels like this enormous task.
Right.
Some of them bigger. It's just like, well, okay, I got to go to work today. I don't want to go to work today. A lot of that comes out of depression. And we have depression right now like we've never had.
Yeah,
it's a real thing. And there's a lot of guys, there's a lot of men out there that would just like to act like that depression is not real. People on antidepressants it's just a joke. It's just a system. No, depression is very real. And you have to acknowledge that it's real, and you have to acknowledge that you need help. And whether you want to say that you're going to get help medically or not, that's not any way, shape, or form the point that I'm trying to make. I think the help that people need, that men need especially, is going to come from connecting to other men, the right men who are going to be able to help them because they've been there, done that. There's a little bit of an age gap between you and me,
Mm-hmm.
and you have been a great person for me to be connected with for that example of iron sharpening iron. You have been encouraging. You have helped. You've been shoulder to shoulder in here on some of the most monumentous days that we've had at this gym where we just needed all hands on deck to help pull off some of the things that we've done. And you've been right there side by side helping since the day that you and I met, which is incredible. People need to know what we've already stated. You and I met over a t-shirt in a coffee shop, but it was our faith that really was the glue that held us together beyond just one conversation in a coffee shop.
I want to unpack what you just said for a second, because there's some people in here, they may not give a buffalo nickel for about what I'm about to say or what you just said. I'm going to say it anyway because this is for you. This is not for the audience, but it should be important for the audience. But this is really what this comes down to. When we met that day and you shared your story and I shared my story, the reason I've been in this gym, even though I've got two businesses. I've got one that I run and take care of stuff that I've got to do on the tactic side of things. I do the back end of, my wife's a psychologist, so I do the back end of all of her stuff, all the legal pieces and CPA junk and whatnot. I work at a job part-time because that's, again, you got to make ends meet. And it's a job I love because I'm working in the church that I go to, and it's wonderful. But here's the point to all of this. The reason I've been in this gym so much, even though I don't have all the free time that it appears that I have when I'm over here, is the intentionality was just because you got screwed. At the end of the day, you literally got taken advantage of. And it wasn't just your story that you told me. I was able to vet that story through other people without actually even asking anybody. People came up to me and shared, hey, are you aware what happened? 3 different people told me on the outside in that knew your story and knew the other people that were involved, which is almost a carbon copy mirror image of everything that happened to me in Texas 5 years ago. I am almost verbatim. The amount of money lost, the investment. I mean, it's just uncanny how parallel they are. And I remember thinking in that moment when we were talking, yeah, you got railroaded, some things happened, but look at how you mustered it up, you bootstrapped it, you and Sarah came together, you've proven you own a whole strip mall here. There's not many people that can say they own a strip mall with multiple businesses in it at age 28. That's pretty unheard of. But if people knew what you were going through at age 25, 6, and 7 to get to that point at age 28, why people might be on the outside looking at you as like, wow, look at this success. They have no idea what it's like behind the scenes. And because I got to see it and live it somewhat firsthand, I'm like, I'm going to do everything I can because of what you're giving to us to make sure that you know that this matters because of your history and because of my history and because they're so similar. That's where you come alongside. And that's what we're talking about in this stuff. And that's why, to me, it's important to look in the camera and say, that's when you find the right person, this is the stuff that comes from it. And so it doesn't mean every story is going to be a success story. We could hit pitfalls that are unknown tomorrow, and this could all come down crashing and burning. We have no idea. But right now, it doesn't feel like it. And right now, it feels to me like not only are we on the right path, but there's multiple things that are game planned out and calendared and stuff that is coming that we really haven't even unpacked completely, but you can just feel it. You can see it. You can sense it. And it gives hope in somewhat of a desperate time. And when you're sitting down and you're going, man, how do I make ends meet? Perception on the outside is, man, these guys got it made. Oh. And then if they actually found out your story, see, that's why I won't ever do a bleeding heart story. When somebody comes to me, it took me so long. I mean, I was married years and years and years before I ever even talked about sodomy with my wife. I know I've shared that, but ever since I've shared that story, I've had multiple guys come forth and say, yeah, your story's my story. And we've gotten into these conversations and I've spoken up on stage about it. Blah, blah, blah. But here's the deal. I can look backwards and tell you, I don't even care that that's happened to me now. What I care about is that the other guys that never unpacked it, that were ready to end it all, lose their marriage, were angry at home, their kids couldn't understand, they'd lost their job, they just had never dealt with it. To me, that's what it's all about right now. To take what happened to me and glorify it and put it in a book and tell the story over and over, I would be the most egotistical. I would never do that. All I want to do is go, I've been there. This is my story. You've been there. That's your story. I'm not even going to try to compare it, but how about we get you out from that foxhole that you're in? Because right now you're just taking fire. You're hunkered down and you're not dealing with it, and we got to get you out of that hole. And that's all this was about. When we met, again, for those that didn't know, I was next door at his wife's coffee shop, and I was wearing a jiu-jitsu t-shirt. Jared walked over to me and said, where'd you get that shirt? And that's where everything started, the whole thing. And here we are all these months now. I don't know how long ago it was now. It seems like forever ago. But here we are sitting down talking about this stuff at the end of Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, if you will, going, what's it like to be a guy? Well, I can tell you what it was like to be a guy that day in a shop with another guy that walked in that I didn't know, who owned the shop, that I didn't know that owned the shop, that started a conversation. And here we are together, not only just friendship, but in business and working towards things that have yet to even be developed. And you could just feel the enthusiasm and the excitement. And here's the cool part about it. It's not just you and I. There's other people. I was in here Saturday at the beginning of the tournament. I had 2 different events in the last 2 Saturdays during events, which figures, but I had 3 different people walk up to me and go, I don't know what you guys are doing behind the scenes, but this is so cool. Like, you can feel it. And Chris was one. Chris came up and he's just like, whatever you need, man. Like, I'm really feeding off of this. And so I shared all of that to say I feel blessed and honored, and it's not a butt kiss. I'm not blowing sunshine. It's not. It's literally the legitimacy of the very thing we're talking about, and it's granule and it's grassroots, and that's where it's got to start. I'm not saying that there's not. I'm not saying there's not dudes out there that don't have influence, maybe the Russell Brands of the world or the Joe Rogans who are slowly converting over and starting to see faith. And, and I'm hopeful for all those things. And they have millions of people to listen. They can impact a lot of people for sure. But I still think Joe Rogan would sit here in a chair and go, it's the one-on-one things that matter the most. All the stuff he says from the microphone, all the guests, I bet behind closed doors, the stuff that he has one-on-ones are the things that impact him the most. How could they not?
So let me just take it back just for a second, because I don't really want to, we don't even have enough time on this episode to really get into stories, my story, your story. I mean, we've already told bits and pieces here and there, but what's more important about, the way that you and I met and the similarities of our background and what we had been through recently and just all of the commonalities that we had, that's all well and good. But if we would have just had a connection and a friendship, but you and I were not on the same page as far as being believers, as far as having faith, as far as having a common purpose, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
No, we wouldn't.
So that's really the point that I feel most important right now to drive home is just think about this for a second. A business without a purpose is going to fail.
Yep.
There's a reason why you got to have a business plan if you want to get a loan from an established lender or bank.
Sure.
There's a reason why you need to have a business plan. What is another word for a plan? A purpose. A
Pro
business
forma.
without a purpose is not going to succeed.
Right.
And not all businesses have good purposes. So don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But I want to use that as an example to get to the next point. A marriage without a purpose is going to fail.
Right.
Why are you married?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want to get married? My parents have been ministers for a very long time. They have a marriage counseling, a pre-marriage counseling class that they do. And the failure rate of marriages after going through a counseling course like that for pre-marriage, it is substantially lower than just two people getting married without otherwise really thinking about what a marriage is,
right,
and what a purpose is, because it makes you realize marriage is not just a loose commitment to somebody. We're just going to see if we can wing this thing and figure it out. Marriage has to have a purpose.
Yep.
And the same thing goes for manhood, being a man. You are going to fail as a man if you do not have a purpose.
True.
Men without a purpose will fail. They will be wayward. They will want to give up. They will want to end it and just be done. But a man with a purpose, and a man with a purpose and the will to carry out that purpose, a marriage with a purpose and the will to carry out that purpose, a business with a purpose and the will to carry out that purpose, then you start talking about the opposites of these things, where you're not talking about businesses failing, you're not talking about marriages failing, but the opposite of that, succeeding, and succeeding in the intent that is meant for businesses, marriages, manhood. And it all comes to exactly what we've talked about and we are talking about. That is faith. That is what God has put us on this planet to carry out. And of course, yes, we've talked about God a lot, but this has definitely, if we were to just say, okay, this is the last episode of the Daily Carry podcast, we're done, it's over, which that's not what we're doing, so don't worry. But let's just say if we were for a second. For me, what this has really allowed so far for me is, as we've had these conversations more and more, it's helped encourage me, okay, you're talking about it on the podcast, so why aren't you just talking about it more regular every day? That's the purpose. That's why you're on this planet. That's why you're here. That is why the Rock Jiu-Jitsu team exists. This is why Udalali Coffee exists. My wife does an incredible job. You walk into that coffee shop, you hear the Christian music playing, you see her decorations on the wall, you know that this is a business with a purpose. And I believe that the Rock Jiu-Jitsu team, people know. They know that we're faith-based. They know. They see the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu flag up there. But you and I were just having a conversation the other day about me feeling this need to step into more than just, this is not just me teaching a group of kids or adults jiu-jitsu. We have built a community, and with the community, It's not just about teaching, but it's about leading. It's about, and a lot of people may have a misconstrued idea and understanding about leading. I'm not talking about stepping up and telling people what to do. I'm talking about leading by example.
Yeah.
I'm talking about standing up and doing it, not being afraid to tell somebody. If they tell me they're going through a hard time, tell somebody, I've been there. You know what got me through? Prayer. Because you just now talked about my story, and you talked about how whenever I told you about my story that you verified, yeah, you know why? You know how you were able to verify it? Because I was at a point, and this is so important because I have to be able to at least share this in case anybody listening needs to hear this. Believe me whenever I tell you I have been to that place of wanting to give up.
Mm-hmm.
I have been to that place of being so done and so frustrated and so aggrieved, so anxious and nervous, and not all of the emotions that you could think that come with failure, uncertainty, and come with just this feeling of betrayal. But all of the emotions, been there, done that. I've been to the point of desperation. I have been a desperate man. And here's the thing. In a lot of those moments of desperation, I found myself having all kinds of conversations with as many people as I could. Just, hey, what do I do? Can you help me? Know anybody who can help me? And for a long time, and for many, many conversations, I had some conversations with really good men that had really good feedback. I had some conversations with men that definitely weren't on the same page as me.
Right.
And all that they see is dollars and cents, and that's it.
Yep.
I was definitely putting way too much stock in what we started this podcast, this episode, in talking about. I was putting way too much faith in men being what was going to help me through this thing.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there was conversations that I had with men that were very encouraging. There was some conversations I had with men that were not very encouraging. I had some conversations with men that I thought otherwise would maybe be able to help me in my situation that I left there feeling literally physically sick.
Yep.
From those conversations. And it led me in all this desperation and all this search for answers and direction. I'll have to just share the whole story at some point so that people can get more context, so that it's not me just saying things without being able to really explain the depth of them. But over and over and over again, through my story, through my situation, there was this way that God had of leading me back to him. And the story and the testimony of God and his provision into my life, my wife's life, our businesses, the way that he opened all of the doors, even whenever I was knocking and pounding on all kinds of doors around us and trying to force something to open, the way that God just said, hey, turn to me, I'm going to open the door. But through all of this, all these tests and trials, as we're having to, that patience, having to stay there and feel like, what can I do? It's that surrender that I believe we had to finally get to, where God was like, okay, here we go. I'm going to open this door. But even whenever he would open a door at a time, that's what it was a lot of times. And even still to this day, a door at a time. There hasn't been this huge, all your problems are solved. No, far from it. God has continued to give us what we need when we need it. And he says, okay, just trust me a little more. Just trust me a little more. And then we're going to get to the next door. And that is what I feel like in all this process. God just wants you to start somewhere and trust him enough to open that first door. It doesn't mean that your life is instantly going to change and there's going to be this huge instant relief and everything's incredible. You got $1 million in the bank that suddenly appears out of thin air. Believe me, that doesn't happen. As much as I wish it doesn't happen. But just being able to turn and trust in him, trust in something bigger than yourself and your situation. The Bible says, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Ask and you shall receive. But then there's also scriptures that talk about whenever we knock, it opens. But then there's doors that we're supposed to knock and open, and there's doors that God opens. So if we knock and it doesn't open, that's for a reason. Because there's another door that God's wanting to open. And I'm saying all that to say this, that anybody out there listening, there's a reason why we're talking about God. There's a reason why we're talking about our faith. And that's because without purpose, Just like we talked about businesses, marriages, men, without a purpose, they're all going to fail. And the same is true for this podcast. The purpose is you and I have very much experienced iron sharpens iron. We experience that every day.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of this podcast is for people who maybe don't have that in their life right now. And they need a little bit of iron to be able to start sharpening themselves.
Right.
And this is just a start. Because really, you and I would both agree and encourage anybody listening, you got to go find that circle. You got to go find the right people. You got to get plugged in and connected. Listening is great. You're going to get some encouragement. Hopefully, Lord willing, you'll get some needed encouragement from our conversations. But at the end of the conversation, don't let the conversation stop. It's time to go out and have your own conversation.
Right.
Have your own experience, your own growth.
I will, I'm going to close out my portion of this. I want to share a story real quick. It's not my story. I'm going to tell it on behalf of somebody else. I didn't ask him permission, but at the exact same time, I know he would grant it. So I'm going to share it. And this is well before your time, but I think this is incredibly applicable right now to what's happening in society. So you got to go back to 1979. You got to go back to the U.S. Embassy in Iran, and you got to go to the Iran-Contra deal that happened. And so
I know it well from American Made.
Yeah, American
The
Made.
movie.
That's right. So the American embassy is overrun, and prisoners are taken. They have gone in and literally taken siege of the embassy. The last Marine standing in the fight before being taken prisoner was a guy by the name of Ken Krause. And Ken, I've known Ken now for 7, maybe 8 years. Ken, when the Iranians came in and took over, they started the torture immediately. 7 days later, no sleep, brutally tortured. Ken Krause, this young Marine, as he tells the story, and I've heard him tell this story a handful of times, he had one place that he went to, and that was hope in God. Hope. There was no more battle plan. Hope is never a battle plan. Hope is what happens when the battle plan fails in this particular case. So he puts his faith and he puts his hope in God. And his prayer is, he's right on the cusp. If you know anything about this, he's right on the cusp of the election. All of this happens like literally like hours and before Reagan comes into office. So the point behind this is Ken was so badly tortured and so badly beaten that he could have died from his injuries alone, just from his injuries alone. But he prayed and he prayed. And you said it. One door opens. Well, he was praying for the next moment in time. Like, what door is going to open to keep me alive for a little while longer? Because I know they're coming to get me. I know they're coming to get me, and it's going to be an answer to prayer. It's not just a battle plan to come get me. There's going to be an answer to prayer in this, because he was in an area that nobody knew where he was at. So that's not did they just take the embassy, but they had actually taken him. So it wasn't just as simple as coming in and sending the powers to be and, come in and knock down some walls and let's go in and rescue some people. They had to find these guys. And Ken's story is pretty amazing because the way he was found and all of this, it all came full circle through prayer. And he said it was the only thing for 24 hours a day for 7 days straight. 7 days. Imagine being awake for 7 days. Being awake. Mm-hmm. Never mind being tortured. Man, imagine being awake for 7 days. And he said just prayer. It was just prayer. It was just talking to God in that moment. And he says I felt this peace, even though the pain was excruciating. Sometimes the pain just went away completely. And I felt like I was just washed over in comfort. And I just knew it was going to be okay. And to this day, Ken has his nightmares, and Ken has his memories, and Ken has his hurts and his trauma. But Ken's an advocate, and Ken goes out and he talks to guys that have been blown up in the field of battle, or cops that have been shot and lost their career, or whatever it may be. And he doesn't go out and go, hey, look at me. I spent 7 days getting tortured. My story is much worse than you. Ken goes out and just edifies and uplifts and walks alongside guys, because his calling now is to be there for other men that maybe want to give up, don't have answers. And, you know, I don't know if there's anything darker than being tortured nonstop for 7 days. If there is, I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head. But Ken uses that experience, but he talks about it through hope, and he talks about it through faith and through prayer. And I think, I mean, he reached out to me a couple months ago, and he's like, hey man, I'm starting to get a little bit long in the tooth, long in years. And he goes, when my day comes, just know you're going to be one of my pallbearers. Dude, like, what do you say to a guy? I wasn't there with him. I didn't suffer the way he suffered. But he told me that because he says, you came alongside and you walked that journey with me. And he goes, and I've learned from you to walk that journey. That was humbling to me. I mean, I was tearful over that. And I mean, humbled and honored, but I don't feel like I earned anything with this guy. I mean, compared to what he's been through, are you kidding me? And yet, that hope and that prayer, part of that prayer was surround me, and you said it earlier, surround me with men that will walk this journey with me, that I can't walk alone. And much like you and I met at a coffee shop next door, Ken and I met at a conference of all places that somebody invited us both to. We didn't know each other. We didn't even know each other when we walked up. I hadn't even heard Ken's story. We just started talking. And the next thing I know, Ken's up on the stage in front of thousands of people, and he's been asked to share his story. And we just instantly hit it off right there in that moment and became friends. And we've never, I mean, Ken, I bet he texted me 8 times yesterday. And there's not a week that goes by that we're not in communication. And it all came from prayer. I find that it's amazing how God works. It's amazing he is, I'm going to say this one more time. He is the surviving lone Marine, the last guy in the fight. He stood the ground until there was no more ground to be stood, tortured nonstop. And yet I get the privilege and the honor of meeting this guy in a different state that neither one of us lived in, at a conference, to be able to sit down and hear this man's story. That honestly changed my perspective forevermore on what a man can go to and go through and be capable of. So when I look at our wussified society right now and all the screaming and yelling and all this stuff, I so badly want to put Ken out on the front lines and image and go, hey, look what this guy went through. And yet Ken would never want that. Ken in humility wants to sit back and go, nope, I just want to be there for other people. And I think there's something very powerful in that.
Well, I absolutely love that. That's such a great example to tie everything together that we've been talking about, and the point that we've really been trying to drive to kind of close out June and close out this episode and leave people on a high note. Anybody listening, because you just now said Ken's driving force was hope in God, and his prayer was obviously and his prayer was answered, thank God, that he's still here today, and he is encouraging other people. And through that testimony, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And that is, Ken sounds like he's doing an excellent example with that. But to give a scripture that'll tie that together and wrap us up, I think, pretty nicely for this episode is Jeremiah 29:11, which everybody, or most people, are probably familiar with. If you're not familiar with it, listen to this, because this is very important. There's hope for you.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's part of your purpose, is for there to be hope for you. Jeremiah 29:11 says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Remember, we just said it a little while ago, plan. You can change that word out. There's a synonym for it, and it is purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So God's purpose comes with hope. There is hope for you. Wherever you are today, whoever you are today, whatever situation, it doesn't matter. There's hope for you. And God's plan is to give you hope and to prosper you and give you a future.
Amen.
Amen.
Well said.
All right. Well, you want to close this out?
Yeah, let's do this. Father God, as always, we come before you. We humble ourselves. we are, as we've discussed so much over the last few episodes, we are just in troubled times right now. We all know it. We all sense it. I don't care where you stand, how you vote. We need to lean not on our own understanding, but truly lean into your divine wisdom, your providential wisdom. And as Jared just read, that purpose right now, I believe, is what men need to seek, should be seeking, and we need to come alongside each other and help each other find it. So my prayer is for every man walking out there right now is to seek you, to seek really the purpose for their life, how to lead, how to love, how to edify, how to come alongside, how to carry your cross, and how to pick others up when they are broken and down, and not leave a man in the foxhole, because that is not what we were intended to do. We are warriors, we are battlers, but we are also lovers, and we are friends, and we need to be all of those things to our wives, to our kids, and we need to be that to our peers and our constituency. And in your name, we need to lean not on us, but lean on you and be an example every single day for who you are and what you provide for us. So walk that journey with us, give us guidance, and we will close this out in your son's name. I pray, amen.
Amen. All right, sir. Next time.